What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Down to the Wire. I am here with the Shark, and I am the Breadstick. And today we're going to be talking about something that really happened super recently. Maybe not as recent when this video is going up, but this is still pretty recent to us when we're recording it. The James Harden trade, where he gets traded to New York. So, Dalton, do you want to go over the details about what happened in that trade?
Well, remember, it's the Brooklyn Nets, not the Knicks. Just so that way.
My bad.
You're good. We don't want to confuse anybody.
No, he did get traded to the Nets, not to the Knicks. My bad.
You're good. But, and I want to say the Rockets, they acquired Victor Oladipo, and I think Brooklyn gave up a lot of their picks. I think like 7 first-rounders. That's crazy. And then the Cavs picked up Jared Allen and Taurean Prince. The Pacers picked up Karis LeVert in a second-round pick. And obviously the Nets with James Harden. So 4 teams involved with that trade. That right there is crazy in itself.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back into like the details of the trade, so then we can like completely understand what was given up for James Harden, because you never see a big blockbuster person get traded. So like Dalton said, there was 4 people that were 4 teams that were dealt with this trade, and those 4 teams are the Rockets, the Nets, the Cavs, and the Pacers. So, with these 4 teams all trading pieces around, what was given up? What did the Nets have to give up to get James Harden? Well, if we're going to go with Google and what Google says, all right. So, in this trade, the Nets sent Jared Allen and Taurean Prince to Cleveland, and they also gave up Karis LeVert and Rodimus Kirkus, as well as 3 first-round draft picks, which was the 22nd, 24th, and 26th years, and 4 first-round pick swaps to Houston. Then the Rockets the Rockets received Dante Exum from Cleveland, and Brooklyn acquires a 2024 second-round draft pick from the Cavs to complete the deal. That is a hefty trade just for one player. Now, Dalton, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think this means we're going to go by each team. What do you think this means for the Cavs?
The Cavs?
Yes.
I mean, they're pretty much a big man team now. Because they have Kevin Love, who is, believe, 6'8" or 6'10", somewhere around there. They have Larry Nance Jr., JaVale McGee, and now they picked up Jared Allen. So, I mean, they're pretty big now for the Cavs. So, I mean, they're definitely going to work better on the boards, but does that mean bigger means better? That's the biggest question.
They also have, don't forget, they also have Andre Drummond.
That's true. They're board getter.
Yeah, so they have a lot going for them. I mean, they got a good forward in Taurean Prince, probably can play the 3 for them. They don't have a really good 3 player. Darius Garland, is he a 3 or is he a 2?
I think he's a 2.
Is he a 2? Okay, then Colin Sexton would probably play the 1. But yeah, that's not a bad lineup at all. I think that's a really, really mixed lineup between veterans and young players. The veterans can help coach the young players to really bring this team back up to maybe like a 4th seed. Ever since LeBron left, they were a lottery pick team, but I think they can do better. So let's go from there. I'll take over. What does this mean for the Pacers? Because the Pacers, it did not say in this, but they did have to give up Victor Oladipo for this trade, and he went to the Rockets. All right. So that is a big asset that the Pacers had to give up. But they did get Karis LeVert for Victor Oladipo. Now, I'm not saying that that's like a big jump for the Pacers, but I think with Victor Oladipo being injured and being a little bit of a liability because he's injured, pull some weight off of them. Now, I'm not saying that Karis LeVert is anywhere near the player that Victor Oladipo was for the Pacers, but I think that for where the Pacers are trying to head into a high playoff seed, that they need a player for the now rather for the later in the season. So I think Carlos LeVert was a great pickup for them. Um, I have no idea who the Rodimus Kirkus guy is. I haven't seen him play, so I can't really say much about it. But
No.
with Miles Turner, with Malcolm Brogdon, with Domantas Sabonis, that's a pretty good lineup itself. And the Pacers, they're already doing pretty well without Victor Oladipo. So even with him gone, and the addition of Carlos LeVert, I think that really puts them ahead. Now,
I
Dalton,
agree.
what do you think is going to happen with the Rockets now?
Okay. I mean, they picked up John Wall.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they got a point guard
Mm-hmm.
after Russell Westbrook trade.
Yeah.
And then they had DeMarcus Cousins, which they picked up in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not mistaken, he's coming off the bench instead of being a starter,
Is Christian Wood starting
which,
over him?
from to my knowledge, I think he is.
Let me check the depth chart just to make sure.
Yeah. But also, I mean, with Oladipo, I mean, with his dunking ability combined out with John Wall, I mean, it's going to be more of like a entertainment thing. But other than that, I mean, Houston's pretty much on the downfall of things. I mean, they're not even in playoff contention or in a playoff hunt. So I don't think Houston's going to go very far, even with Oladipo on the team.
Um. Okay, so this is the first string of players. It goes John Wall at the one. Victor Oladipo would be at the two once he comes back. Daniel House Jr. at the three, but he's out right now.
Hmm.
PJ Tucker at the four and Christian Wood at the five. And your backup would be Eric Gordon, Ben McLemore, David no David. I don't know how to say that. I'm sorry, but then Jay Sean Tate at the four and DeMarcus Cousins at the five. I think that Harden wasn't playing to his full potential. Harden was done with the Rockets a long time ago, but they were just playing him just to play him, and he wasn't putting in 100% effort. So I think that's really what brought the Rockets down. And I think the Rockets are going to have a little bit of a vengeance, especially John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, because they're a little bit upset that James Harden kind of just basically was like, I'm done with this team. We're losing. I don't want to play here anymore. And he was always like that since Russell Westbrook left. So I think the locker room tension was probably pretty bad. So I think they're gonna have a vengeance and want revenge. So even if they are on to a bad start this year, they could possibly make a play-in spot, but lose that play-in spot. But I think next year they will have a great. I think if they play with the tension that they have with James Harden causing, I think if they figure that out, I think they can use that to maybe be a pretty decent West team.
I agree. I agree.
All right.
And also to mention, James Harden's only one game with the Rockets this season was his first game back, dropping 44 points and 17 assists. Other than that, he went downhill.
Yeah, pretty much. I just don't. I think he wasn't playing to his full potential. I think that's what separated James Harden and the Rockets getting to a pretty decent spot in the early standings. Now, Dalton, if you
I
don't
agree.
mind, I'm gonna take a little bit of time here to
Oh,
talk about the Nets because I'm gonna rant a little bit.
go ahead. Let's hear it.
So ever since that James Harden was looking to get traded, there was two teams that were really eyeing for him: the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. I looked at both. I was like looking at both, and I was like, he better not go to Brooklyn. Not because that they would be a super team, just because it wouldn't work out, and everybody in Brooklyn, it just that team would fall apart. It really would. And that's my opinion. I think that you have three great players that all want to be the number one option. That wouldn't be, and they would all become very selfish, and it'd be a super heated locker room. I think because the 76ers said that they were willing to give up Ben Simmons for James Harden in a trade, and I think that would have been way better, and the 76ers had more to offer than the than the Nets did, because the Nets were not going to give up Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant. I don't even think the Nets technically wanted Kyrie Irving before the Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant said pretty much that he's not going to go anywhere without Kyrie Irving, so they had to sign Kyrie Irving as well. But you were going to keep those two together no matter what, because they came in a package basically. I think honestly he probably fit better in sharing the ball with Joel Embiid, feeding him in the paint, if he could learn to play that way instead of playing the 40 points per game that he usually does in in the Houston, which is I think another reason why Russell Westbrook probably left or wanted to get traded, if he did want to get traded, was because of the tension between them two that it seemed like that they had even in the beginning of the season. Because there's not enough room to share the ball between them two. That's why I also think if the Thunder were to play because people are like, what would the Thunder be like if this happened? What would the Thunder be like if that happened? So let's be realistic. The Thunder were only really that good was because James Harden wasn't the player who he was. We know that Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant had issues winning a champion or getting far in the playoffs. They missed the top 8 spots sometimes, or at least I think maybe one in 2015 where they hit the 9th or 10th spot. They had trouble getting to the finals again after 2012 after losing to LeBron. They were just not clicking. So if your two best players are not clicking, and you still have your all-star power forward, or probably could have been an all-star power forward with Serge Ibaka, what do you think a prime James Harden would have done? James Harden needs the ball in his hands 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not going to get that playing 6-man on a really good lineup with 2 superstar caliber players that had the ball that both didn't even have the ball in their hands, but honestly should have the ball in their hands 90% of the time. The ball was, honestly, it was like 95, I would say 90% Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant the entire time. The other 10% would go for the rest of the team. So that's why that Thunder lineup would not have worked, because James Harden and Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant all need the ball in their hands in order to succeed. Now, why do I think that this won't work in the Nets? We already have Kyrie Irving, who is having some personal issues, and he's been out. And yes, he has been dominating when he has been here, and he has been playing wholeheartedly, but it does not seem like that lately. It seems like that his heart is not in the game. And even with James Harden and Kyrie Irving playing together on the court, even though Kyrie Irving's been out for like the past 5 games, they've been even. They've won an even amount of games. They're in like the 6th or 5th spot in the East, when everybody projected them to be top 2, if not the top team in the East. Yes, you do lose Spencer Dinwiddie to an injury. Yes, you just did trade Careless LeVert. Yes, you just did trade Jarrett Allen. You just traded Tyrone Prince. What does that leave you? Joe Harris, a washed-up DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden. Now, going back on what I was saying, James Harden needs the ball in his hands 90% of the time. He has to be that number one option scoring guy. He played his best seasons in a D'Antoni system. Now, D'Antoni is the assistant coach to who? Steve Nash, who was coached by D'Antoni. Steve Nash is a young coach. He is still trying to figure everything out. I think that he's probably going to take some advice from the older coaches, especially D'Antoni, who plays through a hero ball system with no defense. Now, this is my opinion. I think Kevin Durant, if he were to say this to me, if I were to say this to him, he'd probably tell me, no, I just want to play basketball. I don't think he's wanting to prove any more than he already has. He's coming off an injury. He's still putting up monster numbers, 2nd in points per game behind Bradley Beal. But it just doesn't seem like that he's really wanting it as a championship team. I think He just wanted to play with his good friend Kyrie Irving. Pretty good seed in the East, but wouldn't really win a championship. He doesn't have the assets he needs to win a championship, I don't think. Anymore, at least. I think beforehand, it looks pretty good. Maybe just some rusty games here and there, but they figure it out. But losing Carlos LeVert, Jarrett Allen, Tyron Prince, that's 3 really good assets to a depth in your bench that you no longer have because you traded for what? A person who plays hero ball that needs the ball in his hands 95% of the time. You can't have 3 players who need the ball in their hand 95% of the time. Now, why am I calling Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving 95% ball play or 95% they need the ball in their hands? Well, look at Kyrie Irving. He had a great system, second scoring option for what? The Cavs, behind the greatest player in the league at the time, LeBron, who just beat and came back from a 3-1 deficit to a 73-9 team, arguably the best team in NBA history. Why would you want to leave that? In his words, I want to lead my own team. So where did he go? He got traded to the Celtics. The Celtics were looking like a pretty good team. They just signed Gordon Hayward, playing for his old Butler coach, Brad Stevens. Just got Jason Tatum in the draft. You got Marcus Smart. You've got Kelly Olynyk got signed somewhere else. But you had a pretty good team. And Jason Tatum is starting to look like a superstar. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's phenomenal. You had the assets to be the best team in the East. Maybe top 3 if you want to put the Raptors with Kawhi Leonard and the Bucks with Giannis, if you wanted to put them 2 there. But that locker room chemistry was terrible. He didn't want to play for the Celtics anymore. He had what he had. He had what he wanted, but that locker room chemistry was terrible, and it was all the publicity was going on to Kyrie about his mood swings. Which is not... You're allowed to have mood swings as a player. You're allowed to be human. You don't have to be perfect in the media. But you need to be able to handle yourself in the locker room and lead a team. If you can't do that, like you said, you wanted your own team, then you're not going to be able to do that. So he met up with Kevin Durant to go play possibly for the Knicks. Going over to Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant 2016 was tired of losing, wanting to win a championship. Couldn't get past a single team. Made once in 2012, but they lost James Harden. Their team wasn't the same. Had issues with Russell Westbrook being a ball hog, needing that ball in his hands 24/7 to get triple doubles. He was like, I'm out. People gave him criticism to going to the Golden State Warriors. I can see why. You're joining the enemy team. Can't beat him, join him. But he did what he set out to do. 2 finals MVPs, 2 championships. And it seemed like he was pretty happy. He was going to stay in Golden State. But who did he butt heads with? Draymond Green. One of the biggest, hot heads in the league. But gosh darn, a good defensive player. You cannot tell me that guy is not a top 10 defender in the league with a straight face. That guy, and he knows how to run the floor. There's a reason why they put him at point guard for sometimes, because he knows how to get people open and run the floor. But just didn't work out between them two, so he decided he wanted to go somewhere else. Where was he going to go to? The Knicks. That seemed like reasonable. He was going to go to the Knicks. Play with Kyrie Irving in Kyrie Irving's hometown. Possibly the Knicks were going to get Giannis in the draft. Or not Giannis, Zion in the draft. Be a pretty good big 3. But then Kevin Durant goes down with an Achilles. Statistically, people don't come back from an Achilles. So the Knicks were like, no, I'm not going to give you a full max whenever you're on a career-ending injury. that could literally end your career. I'm not going to give you that. So Kevin Durant like, okay, I'll go somewhere else. Kyrie said, okay, I'll follow you. And they went to the Nets. Both sat out pretty much the entire year, and now they're back to playing. Again, doing okay. Not what we thought they were doing, but hoping that they would get back. But Kyrie Irving, back to his mood swings. Kevin Durant, scoring 29 points per game, but not really looking like the Golden State Warriors or 23 version of himself. Gotta give him credit for what he's doing. It's phenomenal, but time will only tell how his injury really impacted him. The Nets also got DeAndre Jordan. Not as great as he used to be in Lob City, but still pretty decent. They've got Joe Harris, Caris LeVert, Spencer Dinwiddie, Tyron Prince. Then, oh my, you just had to trade for James Harden. Now, you have James Harden, who is arguably the most ball hog player in the entire league, jumps into people when he shoots, scores 40 points per game because he can. Kyrie Irving, who arguably wanted his own team, who can't handle a locker room situation because of his mood swings. Going back on James Harden, who also created locker room tension, especially saying, I want out, and that kind of pissed off John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, because it should, because you shouldn't talk about players like that, especially when they didn't do anything. Then you have Kevin Durant, a player who the Warriors had to change their phenomenal ball movement system around just so that Kevin Durant could have his spotlight and have the ball a little bit more in his hands. We'll say that. That sounds to me like you have 3 ball hog, need the ball in my hands 90% of the time or more players on the same team. Now, I'm not saying that some of them can't take the step back like they need to. If they do that, great. You will learn how to be a phenomenal team to have 3 amazing first options. But I just don't see it going that way. I see a heated locker room between 3 players that are phenomenal, that should be a first seed, that just are underperforming because they all want the ball. Now, if you put James Harden in Philly, who's his only other competition? Joel Embiid, who sits in the paint. Rather, in the Nets, where you have 2 other players that do the exact same thing that James Harden does. Sits at the free throw line, crosses over, shoots, or drives. Why do you need 3 players that do the exact same thing? That doesn't make sense to me. You had 2. Yes, one may be going out with mood swings. Who Stephen A said that, hey, maybe you should retire because it doesn't feel like that you have the love for the game that you have anymore. Find it or retire. That's what he said. Kevin Durant, I just want to play basketball. Then play basketball. Do what you do best. Win a championship if you want to, but it just doesn't seem like that you went to Brooklyn for that. Then James Harden, yes, I get that you're losing, but don't go to a team where you're going to make it worse. Yes, I realize you lost all of your assets in Houston, but go to a team that you can actually make better and make a possible championship caliber team. Now that there is really not a super team, especially on the East. And yes, we could call it this. I don't think we can call the Lakers a super team. They're great. I don't think any team will probably beat them, but I don't think they're a super team yet. And because of this whole situation with the James Harden trade, and I've been talking forever, and I want Dalton to say a few things before we wrap up, because we're getting actually pretty low on time. I took a while. But I just don't see this working out at all.
I agree with what you said, because you have 3 guys that demand the ball in their hands 24/7. And in the words, one of my the words of There's the pastor in our church who knows basketball. He may or may not come on an episode. He always says this: there can only be one basketball, and that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to fight over the ball, and James Harden is going to single-handedly bring down the Nets to the point where they will get a low seed, and they won't even hit a top 2 spot. And I think the Bucks are still going to win, still going to get the East number 1 seed. But just because you have three guys, Kyrie, Harden, and KD, on paper you think, hey, they're going to win it all. But I just don't see it working because of chemistry. Because of Harden, he's going to single-handedly shoot them out the game, like I just said. And then Kyrie's probably going to want out. Maybe. KD's probably going to stay. But, yeah, I just think it's going to go down. And I still think that the Lakers are still the favorite to win the title, even if they have to play the Nets in the finals. The Lakers will probably win either way. LeBron and AD are just too good. And I think it's more of a dynamic duo game than more of a big 3 game, if that makes sense. Because let's think about it. There hardly isn't any big 3s that worked. I mean, LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh. I mean, that's the most recent of one that worked. Or maybe Clay, Curry, and Durant. And then you go back in the 90s, Jordan, Pippen, Rodman. 80s, Magic, Kareem, Worthy. I mean, see, it's more of a. I mean, you get the point. It's more of like a thing.
It's a duo game rather than a trio game now. I think you are partially right on that. The only reason I'm saying partially is because there is still one big 3 that everyone is overlooking, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but it's only because one player is out right now. We forgot about the 7-3 and 9 team, the Golden State Warriors. Their big 3 was Curry, Clay, and Draymond. Yes, Draymond maybe not himself shooting-wise and scoring-wise, but still a phenomenal defensive player, still can run the floor very well. We don't know what Klay Thompson can do yet because of his ACL and I think now Achilles injury. So he might not be 100%. But what does his game really rely on? Driving? Running up and down the court? No, it's more of just catch and shooting, and defense. Yes, maybe a little bit of driving here and there, but that's really all his game relies on. You can't lose your shooting form. And he doesn't really require that much of a hop in his shooting form, which he can easily get back. And he's a tough guy. People have said that he is probably one of the toughest guys in the league to fight through an injury, and I think he'll be able to do that. And even in practice before his whole new injury happened with his Achilles, he was looking good. Then the man, the myth, the legend, Steph Curry, who is honestly having a phenomenal season, 5th in NBA's Kia MVP ladder right now. Honestly, the Warriors are not looking too bad for what they have. I know I said I expect a 4 seed, but I won't be mad if it's a 5th or 6th or 7th seed. Honestly, Kelly Oubre's not playing 100%. I know that, but I think he's starting to find his 3-point range a little bit more. Andrew Wiggins is playing phenomenal. Eric Pascal needs more minutes. James Wiseman needs more minutes. Draymond starting to get in the swing of things. And Steph's just being Steph. I think that the big 3 will be back. And I think that will probably be the best big 3 to come out since LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh. And I think that will be the team to challenge the Lakers once they are all 100% healthy and chemistry bound.
I can see where you're coming from. But I mean, I'm still gonna stick to my thing and say that duos are more of a big thing than trios, even though there are trios, like I said, in the past that worked out. But I think as the game is moving along, like there's more. It has to be more of a duo game because Braun and AD, and then in the Clippers, Kawhi and Pandemic P, Paul George, and then Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and then Dallas, Luka and Porzingis. So I'm just gonna rant about Luka for a little bit,
Okay.
and I know that we're probably way over time, but I'm gonna say this: at his age, Luka Doncic is producing way more than LeBron whenever LeBron was younger. That's a hot take. That Luka now is producing more than LeBron when he was younger because he's putting up near triple doubles every night. I mean, you saw what he did against Charlotte, he did against Denver, and this stuff he's put up at his age is impressive. And and from what I've been hearing, he is the favorite to win MVP this year. He still is, and I think he's going to be the first. He's going to be the youngest player to win MVP since Derrick Rose when he was at the Bulls. And with Mavericks game Porzingis back, I think they're going to eventually find their stride. They're going to go on a really big run, and I'm going to sound biased, and I think they will hit the fourth seed by the end of the season.
I mean,
That's a lot of bias, but hey, I think Luka's going to win MVP this year, and that he is yet to show his full potential, and I think he's going to hit his prime in like the next 2 or 3 years.
I agree with most of those statements. The one statement that I might be able to argue is that even though Luka is averaging more stats than LeBron is at LeBron's age, you have to realize Luka started playing pro when he was a lot younger than LeBron was, so he was able to shape his game more to the pro level than LeBron was able to at that age. Same with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan played college before he played pro. LeBron James played high school before he played pro. Luka was like 15 and he was playing pro. So he was able to shape his game for the pro leagues way more and faster than LeBron James and Michael Jordan were able to. That's the only thing I'll say on that, because we are way over time and we need to wrap up this episode. All right, so that's going to do it for episode 8 of Down to the Wire. We hope you enjoyed our talk and rant about the James Harden trade, Luka and the Warriors. Click that like button if you did enjoy. Comment down below what your thoughts about the James Harden trade is. I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about it. But I think we made our position very clear that we are unhappy with the trade, and we think it will make the Nets worse than making them better. If they can I will be honest. If they can completely surprise us. If they figure it out, I will be completely surprised. But I just don't see it going that way, and I don't think Dalton does either. So that is our pick, is that the Nets will fall apart because of this. But we will leave that up to what the NBA has for us for the rest of the season and the next seasons going forward. So, again, click that like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. We're going to bring you basketball content every single day. Or not every single day, but every T-days, Tuesday and Thursdays. And we will see you on the next video. Peace.